Hi, I'm Rose. Today I'm with Kute Blackson, spiritual leader, transformational coach, and author of You Are the One. Welcome here.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So what was the inspiration behind the book?
Wow, so many inspirations. As a young boy, I read my first self-help book when I was age 8, a book by Shakti Gawain. So from the age of 8 till 18, I read close to 800, 900 books, and I was always on a quest to really understand who are we and why are we here and what's the purpose of life, and why are some people happy, why are some people miserable. So for me, it was always a passion and the calling to inspire people, to transform people's lives, to serve people.
But at the age of 8,
yeah.
Not every 8-year-old is inspired to read that kind. What was your background like? What was
my first memory as a young boy was literally seeing a crippled woman, being this chubby kid in Ghana, West Africa, seeing a crippled woman crawling on the floor and crawling on the ground, arms, legs just crippled, and she picked up the sand that a man walked on, wiped on her face and stood up. A miracle. Week after week, I grew up seeing these crazy miracles. This man was my father. My father would basically look at a woman in a wheelchair and say, stand up. Why are you sick? You're not sick, stand up. And she would stand up, blind people seeing, deaf people hearing. So I grew up with this sense that everything was possible. So that was my reality. And at age 8, I started speaking in my father had 300 churches in Ghana, West Africa. So I started speaking in his churches, and 14, I was ordained as a minister, given the mandate to take over everything. 17, I left everything behind, really just in a pursuit of following my own dream, following my own heart, which was to do what I'm doing now.
Did you ever get confused throughout that period and question whether or not, you should be on this path? And, were there glimmers of doubt?
When my father pretty much announced that I was going to be ordained as this minister, take over his entire spiritual organization.
So there was an expectation?
So my path was set out. That was an expectation. He knew what my life was going to be. And I knew in my heart, deep down, I had this inkling that wasn't my path. There was a knowing I had, but I was a kid. I was afraid. I wanted his love. I wanted his validation. I wanted him to, to like me, to love me. And I was afraid if I followed my truth, not his expectation, that I would lose him. So there was always a knowing. And I think inside of each of us, there's always a knowing, a sense of something. But often we deny that truth, because we're afraid. We're afraid of the consequences of what will happen. Or we play this game of like, I call it, I don't know. I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know what I should do. I don't know how I feel about this relationship. Right. And we deny the deeper truth in our hearts.
How do we teach ourselves to stop following what we think is expected of us?
Yeah, I found in my own life there's no shortage of people that have expectations on you, that think they know what's right for you. They think they know what your path should be. But I believe that there's no one that knows better for you other than your own self, your own soul. So I think we have to be willing to clear the distractions. We're so distracted, and all these distractions with technology and busyness and life and media really disconnect us and distract us from being able to listen to our own inner knowing. And there's a part of us that knows everything, but we have to clear the space so we can actually attune to it and listen to it and really connect to it, because we know. We really do know. And I think we're afraid. We're afraid because, we're afraid of really listening to it, because if I listen to it, what will happen? I might have to tell myself the truth that I hate my job. I might have to tell myself the truth that this relationship I've been in for 10 years, invested so much into, is not quite right for me, but I'm afraid of the consequences. So the fear often stops us.
Right. Now, in the book, you mention the fear. You talk about fear. You talk about, the questions that we ask ourselves. What are some of the other questions? Yeah. One is the one that you just mentioned. Am I in the right relationship?
Am I in the right relationship? Some of the questions are, I ask people is, what are you pretending to not know? Because we're often pretending to not know. So what are you pretending to not know? And if you did know, what would the deeper truth be?
What are some other questions? Well, I don't know. Exactly. I don't know what I want. I don't know what I want to do with my life.
It's called the I don't know game. Yeah, we confuse ourselves. It's the I don't know game. Because if we stay in this fog of confusion, we can kind of have an excuse to stay stuck, because I don't know what I should do. But if you put a gun to someone's head and say, tell me the truth, people will tell you in an instant. We do know, and I think part of truly creating our lives, creating our reality, is the courage, because there's a responsibility that goes with owning our knowing. There's a real responsibility, but the courage to take responsibility and own our power and own our knowing and trust that nudging. Sometimes that knowing is so subtle. It's so subtle, but it's an inkling.
Well, how do we make that more pronounced? How do we tap more into that?
We have to stop questioning. We're constantly questioning ourselves. We're constantly questioning ourselves. We're constantly questioning ourselves. So I think one of the things we have to do is being willing to acknowledge that finer, subtle feeling, inkling that's there, and listen to it, and act on it, and listen to it, and act on it. And I think each time that we do, it gets stronger, and the channel's open. The channel's open. But as we said, fear is what stops us. The fear of making mistakes, the fear of not being perfect. I think that's another big thing that stops us, the fear of not being perfect. And I often tell people, if you're trying to be perfect, it's never going to happen. If you're trying to make yourself perfect as a personality, it's not going to happen. There's no perfection at the level of the personality. So I think that's something we also have to give up, this whole idea of, I'm not going to do it perfectly. And I think we also have to shift our paradigm and the way we see success. This whole idea of not being perfect and making mistakes and going into the unknown. We often think success is this idea of, I have to achieve the goal or the destination. And I think really it's more about the process of life and the journey of who we become as we evolve on the process of manifesting our dreams and visions.
Right. And you talk about how, the universe teaches us lessons.
Always.
How can we be open to those lessons? How do we know that they're lessons, that they're happening?
I think, one of the ways we know that those lessons are happening are when we look at our lives and we look at some of the reoccurring experiences that keep showing up over and over and over and over and over again. That person you continually are attracting in your relationship as let's say a romantic relationship, over and over and over again, different face, different accent, different personality, but same pattern.
We've all done that.
Yeah, different boss, same pattern. So I think you have to look at that and go, wow, what is this situation teaching me? What is this person teaching me? What is this person, what is this situation really reflecting to me about myself? And I think when we're able to learn the lesson from that, we're able to shift the dynamic that's happening inside of us so we can actually track something differently. But if we look at those reoccurring things, and we ask ourselves, why am I attracting this again? There's often a common denominator, even though those experiences are different, and it's us. So there's the responsibility. Yeah.
And then you talk about forgiveness.
Yeah.
Forgiving ourselves,
Yeah.
which is not something that we do commonly.
Yeah. I think it does start with ourselves, and I think sometimes I always say that sometimes when things don't work out or go according to plan, which we can often be harsh about towards ourselves, I think it's often grace when things don't work out. And it's easy to beat ourselves up, but I look at my life and I look at things not happening and I realize it was just the most amazing thing. So we can waste our time being upset at ourselves and angry at ourselves for not being where we think we should be, but that's just another expectation of thinking we should be someone that we're not or be somewhere that we're not. So I think the importance of really setting ourselves free and meeting ourselves with compassion, meeting ourselves with kindness. We're humans, as human beings, we are imperfect, and that is perfect. And to be able to really love ourselves as we are and as we're not is really part of the freedom, and accept that we are here to learn. We are born, we incarnate into this world as these human beings, souls incarnated as these human beings to learn, to evolve, to learn lessons, to really remember and become who we really are, to manifest that potential. But how we learn is through experiences. And as human beings, we're going to make mistakes. As human beings, we're going to screw up. It's part of the process of evolution, part of the process of learning. So I think as we understand why we're here, then hopefully we can have a bit more compassion for ourselves as we make mistakes, because that's part of the learning.
We talked about a little while ago before we started to film, we talked about our roles here on this planet, right? And looking at it in a different way, as opposed to what am I here to do, what am I here to gain? Going back to success. What was it that you told me earlier?
Yeah, I think,
and how we need to shift that whole thinking.
I think we're so focused on getting what we think we want, and sometimes we might get what we thought we wanted based on who we thought we were, only to realize is this it? I'm not that satisfied. This isn't what I really wanted. And it was really what we thought we wanted based on who we were, which was a conditioned idea. We were programmed from childhood. So I think the shift, the new paradigm is less about getting more of something out there and really about reconnecting with who you are, and less about what can I get and more about what is it that's actually seeking to express itself through me. What is it that's seeking to happen through me? And I think that's a shift from a very egoic-based, me-centric paradigm to opening ourselves to be a channel, opening ourselves to be used, opening ourselves to be a vessel. And I think that's where life moves through us. If you look at people like Gandhi and Mother Teresa and Martin Luther King and Mandela, these were people that they moved beyond themselves, their limited sense of I-ness, egoicness, the Dalai Lama, that was gone, and that's when life happened through them, miracles happened through them in ways that they couldn't have imagined with their minds. They couldn't have visualized and put on a poster board. I mean, I think life exceeded them and shocked them and surprised them, and they were pure vessels, and that's where miracles happen. You look at people like Jesus and Buddha. So
I mean, it's just a great way to shift your thinking. How can I be of service here? What can, I am the vessel. What can I learn as opposed to what can I gain?
Yeah. And I think from that place,
it's brilliant.
We have less to do. I think what I realize for myself that I would love people to hear is, when we think we are the ones doing everything, I have to make my life happen. Right. I have to create.
That's what stress. The whole body language. Yep.
Stress and expectations. But when we realize, wait a second, there is a great process of life that is the same process, that is the same energy that's breathing you, that's breathing me, that's breathing every single element of existence, the sun, the stars, the trees, the fish, the little ants crawling in the jungle. That same force is what's doing us all. And I think the process of life is to surrender to that. Then we realize, wait a second, I don't have to do it. I just have to show up, get myself out the way, say yes to the impulse that's moving, and that's where the magic flows. That's where the magic happens.
Yeah.
Often exceeds what we can imagine for ourselves with our limited minds, because the mind is conditioned.
Mastering the mind.
Yes, the mind.
How do we master the mind? That thing just keeps running away from us.
It's got a mind of its own. It's already gone down the alleyway.
It's down the hallway already.
The mind is sneaky. The mind is always trying to, if you just observe, first, I don't think we can really master the mind. Sometimes people have this idea of mastering the mind like it's this thing you have to get into this, fight with. And I think we have to have a relationship with the mind. And I think when we shift from this adversarial relationship of combativeness with our mind, and we have to kill the mind, we have to get rid of the mind, to embracing it as an aspect of ourselves. And I think having a relation, to me the key word is a relationship with the mind, because the mind is always telling us things. Sometimes they'll say, hey, go get that ice cream, or go do that, and we'll go do it, we'll listen to it, and then we'll be so upset at ourselves. So there's a few things I'll say. Just because a thought is in your mind doesn't mean it's real. Just because a thought is in your mind doesn't mean it's real. Sometimes we think that every thought we have must be real, and we're constantly listening to the thoughts that our minds are producing and thinking that's fact. So thoughts aren't necessarily fact. They're just sort of manufactured, energy movements that are happening, processing through this brain. That's the first thing. And I'll often say too, that
I forgot about that.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right, because we're processing so many thoughts.
We have 60, 70,000 thoughts a day, most of which we can't even remember. They're just conditioned bubbles that are happening that are being processed through our nervous system. So I think we have to have a relationship with that. Otherwise, we attach to each thought, and then and that thought creates a whole reality, and we think it's real, and it really isn't. And I often say that, thoughts by themselves, we put so much importance into thoughts, and I'm not saying that they don't have some importance, but thoughts by themselves aren't what's important. What's really important is how important we make them.
Yes.
That's really how important we make them. Because if we try and get rid of our thoughts, it's impossible. If you try and control every thought, it's impossible. It's about having a relationship with the thoughts by what I found powerful is to observe, to really take a step back and to observe those thoughts, to really step back. And because when we're wrapped up in our craziness, we're in them, right? We actually think we are that thought. I'm not worthy, I'm not enough, I'll never make it, I'll never be a success, whatever it is, I'm unlovable. We think that's actually who we are. And I say it's not really who we are. Who we are is so much more. So if we're able to actually take a step back and start observing those thoughts, like a meditation, observing those thoughts floating through the mind and just observe them, then there's space. In that space is a gap. In that space is some freedom. You know, then as we observe those thoughts, we realize, if I can observe that thought, then I'm not that thought. If you can observe something, then you're actually not that. And then there's some freedom that can open up. And then we actually stop reinforcing that thought. And unless we reinforce that thought, it starts losing its power.
Right. That's brilliant. So we want to just step back long enough to observe it and say, do I really want that ice cream?
Is that really true?
Is it true? Is it what I want?
And then we realize we actually, wait a second, if we stop and we actually come into the present moment. To me, that's like you were asking about an exercise. That's an exercise. That's like an actual practice to actually stop, to become present in the moment. Because most of the time, we're not actually present in the moment. No. We are either in the future or in the past. We're not actually here. And that's what allows us to just spin in an unconscious cycle of making choices that aren't,
a hamster wheel.
That are not in alignment with who we truly are. So that's when, you know, our temptations, so to speak, run us. Whatever the temptation is, suffering, you know, feeling terrible, sugar, you know. But when we're able to realize, wait a second, I have power here. I'm not a slave to my temptations, to my thoughts, to my thinking. Then we take mastery back over ourselves and our lives.
Can you give us some mental exercises that we can do?
You know, I think there's one profound exercise that really changed my life, and I think it will, if everyone really does this exercise for real, it has the potential to change everyone's life. And I call it the truth exercise. Because I've found in working with thousands of people around the world that we're constantly lying to ourselves. We're constantly BSing ourselves. We're constantly pretending. We're constantly playing this I don't know game. You know, and I think that keeps us stuck in mediocrity or relationships that don't work or situations that really don't serve our soul's evolution, you know, our freedom. So it's a simple exercise, not some great meditation, but it's a simple exercise of really, you can write it down, you can do it with a friend, but it's simply telling the truth to yourself about where you are and where you want. And telling the truth to yourself and listing everywhere in your life that you are telling a lie. What are you lying to yourself about and why? And being brutally honest about that. So let's say I'm overweight. It'll be like, I'm overweight. What's the reality of the truth as to why I'm overweight? Here's why I'm overweight. I'm not in a relationship and I say I want to be in a relationship. Why am I not in a relationship? I'm broke. Why do I want to be broke? What's the truth? If this is my experience, there must be some part of me that wants this. And confessing the truth. I found it to be it sounds simple, but I found it to be a profound liberation. Because when we're able to uncover the truth, then you can actually deal with whatever the block is. Then you can deal with, well, the truth is I'm afraid if I get into a relationship, then, you know, I'll be abandoned or I'll lose myself.
But while we're writing these things down, can't we also lie to ourselves?
We can. This is why it's a very difficult exercise. The radical ruthlessness to be that honest is one of the things that I have seen stop people from shifting and transforming their lives, because we lie to ourselves. Deep down, we know. We know. Look, I say happiness is simple. It's not that difficult. There's books written about it. There's millions of self-help books about it. It's very easy. Quit every self-help book. Don't go to another seminar. Just tell yourself the truth. Embrace the truth. Tell yourself the truth. Speak the truth. Live the truth. End the story. You will be happy. Most of the reason we are unhappy, miserable, depressed is because we're lying to ourselves. We're not feeling what we're really feeling. We're suppressing that. We're not speaking what we really feel. We're suppressing that. We're not living what we really want to live. We're suppressing that. And it leads to misery. So I think misery and depression and unhappiness is just a signal that there's a deeper truth we're not really in touch with, and it's an opportunity. So that's why I said you have to do it honestly. Okay, so what are we going to do again? Let's run through this because I need to know. I can watch the video again. You can make a list of all the places in your life where you feel stuck, and then next to that, write down where am I lying to myself in my life? That's really the exercise.
Okay.
So if
and then write down what the actual truth of the reality is.
What the actual truth is.
Okay.
Basically, it's a confession. Mm-hmm. It's a confession with you and yourself and your soul.
Ooh, what a process.
Yeah.
I'm already getting chills.
It's a little scary. If you really do, it's like, I was speaking to my friend about it the other day, and she's like, well, my relationship. I'm like, what's the truth about your relationship? I don't love my husband. I've never told anyone that, and I'm miserable. I'm like, you need to tell the truth to yourself about how you really feel, because there's a reason you're no longer in love. And if you lie to yourself, it's not going to go in a good direction. So it's only by telling the truth that you can actually shift it, do something about it, communicate about it, and shift your reality in your life.
Okay, can I send you my list when I'm done?
Yes.
People come to you from all walks of life.
Right.
You work with them. What do you find to be one of the most common, I don't want to say problems, but challenges that they have?
Okay. There's a simple answer I could give you, but I want to give you a real answer. The simple answer is, I see people coming deep down where we don't feel like we're enough. We don't feel like we're lovable at the core. But I think many of the problems, whether it's I procrastinate or I'm afraid, I think underlying them all, there's a deeper pattern. And that pattern connects and affects all the micro problems on the surface. I always say, we think we have free will, but the degree to which we're conditioned, we're not really free to choose. And I think the real deeper problem starts where, as children, I'll just break it down a second, as children, we're born free. As you said you have a kid. How old's your child?
Two. I have two, actually, 12 and 14.
When they're born, they're these little babies. They're in touch with the divine. You look into their eyes, they're radiating the infinite. The essence is shining. They're alive. I think that's why when we look into a child's eyes, we actually remember that part of ourselves that was that free. A child will jump on a table, sing and dance, and there's no shame. Oh, am I fat? Do you like me? Do you love me? We're just full of free-flowing love. But as we go into life, based on society, our parents who are doing the best that they can do, friends, family, culture, we get conditioned. Maybe we were abandoned, we weren't loved as much. Whatever the situation, there was trauma, whatever the situation was, as children, a couple of things happened. We slowly learned to, as a way to cope and survive, to start to not feel. We slowly learn to disconnect from our feelings as a way to cope, as a way to function, as a way to survive, as a coping mechanism.
Right,
So
and as a result, we get that baggage.
And we start suppressing the feelings down, and the layers start building up. The layers of unfelt emotion, anger, fear, sadness, hurt, guilt. These layers build up that slowly disconnect us from our true essence, because those layers are covering up that free-flowing energy of our essential nature. That's why when you see some people, they seem so heavy. On the other side, as children, we go out into the world and we start, learning a way of who do I need to be in order for my mum to love me? Who do I need to be in order for you to love me? So we'll put on a mask, a face, the good boy, the perfect person, the nice guy, whatever it is, the independent person, again, to function, survive. And we kind of create a persona, a mask, a persona, personality that we get locked inside of. And we get so locked inside of that, we think, this is who I really am. And I often say, is that who you really are? And we end up living our lives based on that locked in persona, doing our relationships, making our choices. And I often say, is that who you really are, or is there more? Because often who you are is not really who you think you are, it's just who you've been conditioned to be based on survival programming. So what I've seen is much of our suffering, much of our pain, much of our unhappiness and misery, problems, come from being stuck in this limited perception of ourselves, this limited conditioned person that we think we are. So we've kind of disconnected from ourselves. And I've seen that the root of all issues, problems, challenges, procrastination, fear, addictions, really at the core come from being disconnected from our essential nature. And as a result of that disconnection, we go out into the world, whether it's a drug addiction, an alcohol addiction, a love addiction, which we're seeking that connection with that deeper source, that deeper something, that feeling, that we're trying to get in touch with that again in all these, by taking all these dead end, unproductive paths.
So it really just reinforces the fact that we are all the same.
We're all the same.
Because we're all experiencing the same emotions, the same feeling on the same level.
And we've been conditioned in the same way by our culture and our families. Yeah, we're all at the core, we're all the same.
So how do we transform that?
Number one, we have to be willing to become aware and conscious that we are conditioned. and wake up from the trance that, no, this is actually who I really am. No, it's not who we really are. It's who we've been conditioned to be. We have to become aware. Then I think we have to be willing to tell the truth about that, because many times we're not. We get invested into being this character, being this egoic identity, and very attached to being this person because it worked for us. It helped us cope. It helped us survive. For some of us, we became very successful being this way. So we have to be willing to question ourselves. Who am I really? Is who I am really who I really am? It's the age-old question in India, who am I really? To actually really question that. And I think we have to be willing to tell the truth, which is what we spoke about, but also be willing to feel a lot of the suppressed emotion and feelings that we've learned to stuff inside of ourselves. That's why I say, even in the spiritual field, the self-help field, it's easy to do a spiritual bypass. And I think, we are human beings. And we have psycho-emotional intelligence as human beings that we have to be willing to feel, that you can't just go to the light. But if there's darkness that's unresolved, we have to be willing to deal with that as well by being willing to feel those feelings that have been suppressed and integrating that so we can embody the light into our being.
Listening to you brings me back to exercises that I had done with one of my mentors. And, just asking the question, who am I? It's not a question that we typically ask ourselves. And when we stop for a period of time, just long enough to ask ourselves that question, when we go through all of the things that you've discussed, I had realized that I didn't have a clue.
That's honest.
I didn't have a clue as to who I was. Because we are also conditioned, to have this certain reality and to get there and to live this life that we think that we're supposed to live. Yeah. And we never stop long enough to ask ourselves, is this really what I want? Does this make me happy? Am I with the person that I want to be with? And we just find ourselves there, and then we meet people like you and we ask ourselves the question, and life changes.
It takes courage.
It does.
It takes, anyone that is on this path, it takes courage to question. It takes courage to be alive, to be human. It takes courage to face yourself so you can find yourself. But I often say you have to be willing, we're often told know who you are. Mm-hmm. I like to say actually be willing to not know who you are.
It is
so you can
very
find
liberating.
Out. So you can find out who you really are, not who you've been told you should be. We're told so much in our culture, you got to go to college, you got to be this way, you got to be that way, you have to fit this idea. You have to be normal. Why can't you just be like Susie? What is normal anyway? It's just the creation. Yeah. But when we find out who we are, then I think we find a deep fulfillment and are able to live that. And based on that truth, the real truth of our essence, create a life that is authentic.
True, very true. So now you also ask your people that you work with,
yes,
if this were the last day of your life, how would you answer it?
If this were, you're asking me?
Well, no. Well, you ask. Yeah. You know what? Yes, I am asking you. I am asking you. If this were the last day of your life.
Honestly, this might sound cliche, but I would be doing what I'm doing now. I do my best to live my life, as it were, and I look at my life realizing, look, life is short. There are no guarantees. None of us know when that moment's going to come. People were listening might say, well, Kute, I had an astrology reading and my astrologer said I'm going to live till 90. But the reality is none of us know. We're in New York and 9/11 happened years ago. And I guarantee you no one that walked out of their condo or their apartments that morning that were in the tragedy thought they all thought they were going to come back that evening. So none of us know. There's no guarantee. And at the end of one's life, you can't go to God and say, hey, God, I know I'm dead now, but can you give me a refund? Can you give me 2 years back? It's gone. You can make money back. You can, buy shoes again, but it's gone. So I think life is precious, So I often ask that question to people because it confronts people with the reality of impermanence, the reality of death. This body will die. The soul is infinite. What we are is infinite beings, never born, never died. But this body is just the clothing, like everything that will dissolve. So I think the more we're able to not resist that fact and face that, then I think it frees us up to not waste any time. It frees us up to say, wait a second, do I want to be spending my time, on this thought? Do I want to be spending my time feeling this emotion? Do I want to be spending my time with these people? It's an urgent call to action. I call it the best time management technique around is face your death. Face your death. Be with your death. That's what I had to do, is really make friends with death. Make friends with death. Embrace it. Sit down with it. Love it. Because that will inspire you to squeeze every second out of this life, every second out of this moment. And I think many of us, we're constantly waiting for some special moment.
And we're also not, we don't like to deal with death. We don't like to talk about it. We don't like to.
But it's the only, it's
part
like
of the conditioning.
It's guaranteed. From the moment we're born.
I never heard it that way.
From the
but
moment,
you are so right.
I don't have to be psychic. At some point, you, we, me, everyone, right. Obama, Oprah, Elvis, Sai Baba, Ramana Maharishi, Mahesh Yogi, Kofi Annan, Will Smith are going to die. And that's not because I'm psychic, it's just reality. And if you look at history, I think it's going to happen. But we're always resisting it. Yeah. I think if you can face it, then you realize, wait a second, what do I have to lose? So my question becomes, if I know I'm going to die, how do I want to go out? Do I want to go out contracted, afraid, holding my love back? Because I believe when we hold our gifts back, when we hold our love back, we're dying anyway. It's a living death.
So you hear that? Don't hold back your love because you're killing yourself.
It's like a soul suicide. And I realized that when I had the choice of following the expectation of my father's path to be a minister and take over his organization, the expected path, or going on my own path, which was doing what I'm doing now and going into the unknown with no support, I knew if I took the known path, I would die. No matter what success I created on the outside, it would be a death. And life's too short. It's every second is a precious gift. So we have to seize it.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. One last question. One of my favorite videos is The Miracle of You.
The Miracle.
It's, there's so much information in there, and it's helped me to look at life in a different way and appreciate all of these things that, how our body functions without us thinking about it, how the blood. Tell me what inspired you to create that video.
I'll be very, very honest. Years ago, I was sitting around feeling sorry for myself, which, sometimes we have a tendency to do. And I was like, well, this isn't happening, that's not happening, oh my God.
Right, so you're human.
I was in my, this is a manifesting. And then I had this epiphany. I went out to the desert and I had this epiphany. I started seeing the beauty of life and the stars and the moon and the cactus and the this and all of this. And I felt the overwhelming love that the universe has for me. To even breathe right now, all of us, to even breathe in this moment, there are trillions of processes occurring right now. To take a deep breath. How do you even do that? I couldn't create that. So I had this experience of feeling the love, the totality of the love of the universe manifesting in this one moment. To even just have this moment, to be able to move my hands. And it felt so humbling. And it felt so overwhelming just to be able to whoa, what universe is moving just to be able to move my hands. And I felt so blown away and so embarrassed that I take this for granted. It's so simple, but it was so embarrassing for me and so humbling that I take this for granted every day. I get up and walk and I don't realize the entire, miracle of that. And it just hit me and I started to weep. And I started to feel my own, I don't know what the word is, ungratitude, ungratefulness. And I started, this is part of what inspired the book, I started to also feel my own entitlement, like life owes me something, like life owes me another day. Like if I visualize life owes me the parking spot, life owes me that goal, and it hit me like life owes me nothing. And it was like giving it up, because also what I realized was life has given me everything. And I felt the everythingness of life. I felt the process of life. I felt how the process of all of life, the sun, the moon, the stars, the oxygen, the trees, how we're all completely interconnected, being lived by this great mystery, consciousness, God, the divine, whatever you want to call it. And I felt, this is living me. And it was such a miraculous moment of just weeping. And I saw, and maybe some folks will relate to this, that my own egoic sense of being a separate self wants to create a separation. Like, it doesn't want to be in gratitude, because there's an egoic fear of, if I am in gratitude, then I have to actually surrender. Surrender to what it is. Like, if I think I'm doing it myself, then I don't have to surrender. But if I actually truly surrender myself to the process of life, then there's kind of like a recognition of something bigger than myself, which is scary for the ego. And that, once I acknowledge, wait a second, there's a process that's happening, I felt the miraculousness of all of this existence. And I had this experience of feeling it, living my entire body. And it was out of that, gratitude feeling that this video emerged, and the words emerged, and the idea emerged. And I wanted everyone to feel like, wait a second, we've all won the lottery just to wake up. We've won the lottery. My parents owe me nothing. They've given me everything already. My friends owe me nothing. Government owes me nothing. No one owes me anything. And if anyone gives me anything, it's a bonus.
It's a bonus,
but
sure.
Look how wealthy and rich I am. And it wasn't an idea, it just hit me.
So thank you. I'm beyond words. This has been one of the most amazing experiences for me.
Thank you.
Kute Blackson, you are the one.
You are the one.
I'll take it. We are the one.
You are the one.
Yes, everyone in the room is the one, and you are the one.
It's been great being here.
Thank you.